In today's video, I'll show you the 4 different ways I cap square tubing, and one of them doesn't require welding. But first, why do we cap it? For me, it's looks. That looks quite amateurish, sticking out from your project. If it's capped off, painted over, looks quite nice. I think looks is a big part. Number 2, it does make it a little bit stronger. How much? I don't know, but you can just imagine if that's got a welded plate on there and you belted it with the hammer a few times, you're probably unlikely to be able to dip that edge in too much. Number 3, keeps the water out. If you're going to get water in these things, they're going to rust. And number 4, keeps the spiders out, all the creepy crawlies. That's a nice spot to live. I'll show you a little spot just over here, not far from where I am. Spiders love these things. But anyway, let's get into it. Nice place to live for them. Get the other end of the same piece. Nice little hidey hole up in there for them to live. And down here, made a bit of a nest in there. You can see this is quite a strong web. We have some good spiders around here. We sort of have a deal going. I don't bother them, they don't bother me. This is number 1, and this is how I do it. It's cut down, across here and around there. So this is gone, that's gone, and that's gone, and we're just left with this big flat sticking up here. And then we're going to fold that over. So I'll cut that now. So this is what we wanted, and now the idea is we'll fold that down over there. Now to make it easier to fold, just on the inside edge here, I'll do a little cut just through about 1/3 of the way through the steel, and that'll give it a nice sharp bend here, and it won't have that tendency to do a bit of a curve. I haven't done much, it's just a score. I'll clean him up now, ready for welding. See this here? We can put a weld on there and then grind around and still have a decent weld. If this plate was out level with the outside and you welded around the side, when you grind it off flat, you haven't got much of a weld there. It's not such a big issue with thin steel, but if you can leave a little gap like that, when you round it over, you still know you've got a decent weld. Anyway, tack it and weld her up. I personally don't do that one very often. There's too much work involved in it. All the cuts, the flap, bending and tacking. Basically, to cut a bit of flat bar, sit it on the top and weld around, it's much simpler. So that's what we're doing next. Alright, number 2 way. A simple bit of flat bar across the top. Now I've just got to cut this to size because it's too big obviously. But how I am going to cut it is so that it sits in a little bit on the 2 sides. So I've got somewhere to weld. So I'll cut him to fit and I'll show you then. So that's how I want it to sit. Got a bit of a gap around for the weld. So when I round it off, it's going to be nice. I'll just knock these pointy corners off before we tack it. I just did it with a wire brush, clean it all up for you. Well, that's number 2. I'm not going to weld it all up. You get a gist of it. It's tacked, ready to go. So I've just got a nice place to put a good bead, and when I grind it off, I won't take all the weld off. So that's number 2. That's the simplest. Number 3. We're just going to make a plate that'll just drop down inside there. Drop it in and weld it off. And that way the top is flush. And where that comes into play is if you've already made your gate and this is all flush. If you then go and put a plate on the top, it sits up. Looks a bit odd. So if you bury it in there, you can do the job and grind him off and it'll all look nice and flat like you knew what he was doing at the start. But it's not a bad one. Nice and simple. So I'll cut the flat bar now and away we go. Ready to weld. Alright, so there's number 3. Doesn't the magnet make it easy? Just make your piece, drop it inside like that. Because this join's pretty tight, and if I was going to weld that all up, I would have beveled that in a little bit. Normally when you cut it, you'll find you've got bigger gaps around. There's no need to have it tight. You're going to run a weld around it. So, but that's pretty tight. So if I was going to weld around it, I would be worried that there'd be almost no weld left there when I grind it off. So put a bevel in it or just make it a bit of a looser fit and you've got a gap. If you're going to leave your weld on the top, around here, without grinding off, and this is a fence post, water's going to stay there. And if water stays there, dust will land there and you'll end up with this brown top all the time on your post. So if it's a fence post, grind it off flat so it's easy to clean. Anyway, number 3. Always use the correct safety gear and use your tools safely. I'm not a good role model for this. I've chamfered the side, very little, not too much, and I've just knocked a little bit off the bottom edge so that when we drive it into the square tube it'll go in nice and easy. That's our plug. Let's go belt it in. Dodgy bit. There's our finished product. It's nice to use hardwood for the insert. Just weather's a bit better, and you're going to paint it, no doubt. But that's number 4. Nice and simple. No welding. Well, that's the 4 ways I cap square tubing. I hope you found something useful in it, or at least found it entertaining. If you did, please click like. If you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. There's more to come. Thank you.